Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Charlie's Cruise Tips and Reviews. I'm Charlie Herman, and today I'm going to be reviewing, well, not so much reviewing, but giving a quick synopsis of my most recent cruise on a Carnival Vista. Not so much reviewing the ship because I've been on the ship. This was my third time on the ship and my third Vista class ship in the last 11 months. Because back in May 2024, I went on the Panorama out of Long Beach. In December 2024, I went on the Horizon out of Miami, and now back here in the end of March, I just came back from the Vista, which was out of Port Canaveral. So I've done all three Vista class ships in less than a year, and this is my third time on this ship. So I'm gonna review the cruise itself a little bit more than I would actually do the ship because I've been on a ship before, and if you see my other last two reviews, it's virtually pretty much the same ship with maybe a couple of different things here and there. But other than that, pretty much all the Vista class ships are pretty much the same. So there's not really much to talk about the ships except for the fact on this one they do have a Red Frog Tavern on board as well as the Heroes Tribute Bar. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about on this cruise was this cruise left out of Port Canaveral. Said before we went from Port Canaveral to Amber Cove, Dominican Republic, San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is probably my favorite place in the entire Caribbean to go to, St. Martin, and St. Thomas. Now, this was an 8-day cruise out of Port Canaveral. We spent a couple of days in Miami before the cruise, and then we drove up. We rented a car, drove up to Port Canaveral, spent a day in Cocoa Beach. If you're ever staying in Cocoa Beach, or should I say Cape Canaveral for the cruise, I recommend staying at Radisson at the port. That's my go-to hotel when I stay there now. So as long as it's affordable for me, that's the one I'm always going to stay at because it's a perfect location. It has one of the most beautiful pools you'll ever see, and it's just a great atmosphere. Okay, so we went on this cruise March 22nd, so it was the end of March. When my friend and I booked this cruise almost a year and a half ago, we had no idea it was spring break in the Midwest and in parts of the South when we booked this cruise. So on the ship, there were 900 kids. I kid you not, it was my friend and I, we spent most of the time on board in the adults only area because basically everywhere else there were kids everywhere. You could not escape them, especially in the aft pool. They basically took over the entire pool. The only time you could really get in there and have enough space and enjoy it is when you were coming back from an excursion or coming back from port while half the ship was still virtually half empty. So that's really the only time on board on this cruise you can enjoy the pool without going kid crazy or them taking over the hot tubs is when you were coming back from an excursion. So that's one thing we'll have to keep in mind next if we ever book the well, I have booked this week before, just never out of Port Canaveral, so I think I'll keep that in mind. Stick to Miami next time I book a cruise this last week of March, because I haven't sailed this weekend on Miami before. While there are some families, it's not completely taken over by families and kids, so that's something I'll have to keep in mind if I ever cruise this week again on Carnival, go out of Miami, not Port Canaveral. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is I'm going to start talking about the ship itself briefly, not much. I'll talk more about the cruise director, Frankie, and more about some of the staff on board. But other than that, the ship itself was very nice. One thing I did not like, but I guess they're doing on most Carnival ships now, is they took the casino bar out of where the casino used to be, and they put a bunch of slot machines in there. So, like, basically, it used to be a circle bar in the middle of the casino, and they took that out and filled it up with a circle of slot machines. So unfortunately, they did take out the casino bar in the ship. So if you're someone who's been on the Vista before and you look forward to going spending some time in the Vista bar, especially later at night, because that was one of the bars that was open later. Unfortunately, that is gone. I wasn't too happy about that, but I get it because Carnival is starting to take out some of their casino bars on some of their ships. Okay, another thing on board we actually did for once we normally do the hibachi one day for lunch on board, but this ship did not. It had the bonsai sushi, but not the bonsai teppanyaki. So what we did was one night for dinner, instead of the main dining room, we went to the steakhouse Fahrenheit 911, and I gotta tell you, It was worth the $52. If you're ever on a Carnival ship and you feel like going to the steakhouse one night, I recommend it. It is worth the $52. I got the 18-ounce cowboy ribeye steak. That was wonderful. I got the fries to come with it. The potatoes. It was wonderful. I definitely recommend if you're ever on a Carnival ship, go to Fahrenheit for dinner one night. It was wonderful. Another thing we did on board, which was I like to spend time at, was the piano bar. The piano bar every night was busy. Some nights you could get a seat, some nights you couldn't. But mostly because I said there were so many kids on board after around 9:30, 10 o'clock. There were plenty of seats in the piano bar. He did do some dirty songs after 10 o'clock, after 11 o'clock. Some he stayed away from because he was just trying to get the general feel of the ship itself, Daniel. But he did a very great job, a very good job. He was wonderful, but he had the pulse of the cruise. He knew what songs he could get away with and which he couldn't get away with. Like I said, this was a crowd from some of the South, the Midwest, some transplanted New Yorkers who live down south now. It literally took my friend and I about until like the second to last day of the cruise, I think, or the last port day, because this was an 8-day cruise. So it took us till like the last couple of days of cruise to meet anyone else from New York on the cruise. We literally thought until like to like 2, 3 days left in the cruise, we were the only New Yorkers on board. So there were mostly people we met on board. I met some from Georgia and Tennessee, but mostly from Minnesota, Indiana, Wisconsin. I think some people from Missouri and Iowa, but I can't remember exactly. But like I said, it was a lot of people from the Midwest because it was spring break on board this ship. Now I'm going to start talking about the Red Frog Tavern was always busy. The Heroes Tribute Bar was always busy, especially because it was March Madness. So you had people in there every day watching the games. You had some people watching other sports, but it was mostly the NCAA tournament, some NBA games on. Keep in mind, opening day for baseball wasn't until, let's see, Thursday and halfway through the cruise because the cruise was Saturday and Sunday, so Thursday was opening day. But they really didn't have too many baseball games on there on ESPN. I don't know why. They have to deal with ESPN, but they didn't show too many baseball games. Um, see, the next thing I want to talk about is the cruise director, Frankie. He was wonderful. He was all over his ship. He's a very nice guy. He sat down. We had a chance to talk a little bit. He's a very nice guy. If you've seen some of my other videos or my pictures, you've seen my championship belt I have for my platinum belt I made when I from Carnival, which I made when I reached platinum status. He signed it, took a couple of pictures with it. He loved it. He was at the 80s party. He was a great MC for that. Overall, Frankie is a great cruise director. I would love to sail with him again. I'm sure I will, or at least I will try to. The uh, the staff on board, they were very nice. They were very they what's the word I'm looking? They were very polite, they were very nice, they were very easy to talk to. The bar staff, the restaurant staff, actually, the supervisor of guest services, I remembered because she was working at guest services on another ship I was on a few years ago. I believe it was the Mardi Gras celebration. It's one of those two ships. It might have been another ship like the Conquest or Magic, but I remembered her from a few years ago because I remembered the name, the face. It's like, oh, and she was actually able to help me out with a couple of things on board. So that was nice to see a couple of familiar faces on board, including one of the bartenders at I believe it was, yes, at the Serenity Bar. He was one of my bartenders before on another ship, so he remembered me. I remember him. He's like, he sees me coming. He's like, Charlie, Bud Light. I'm like, yes. So I'm like, the minute he knew who I was and knew what I was going to drink, I'm like, yep, cruised with him before, and it took me a second to remember him. But yes, I did cruise with this gentleman before. Excuse me, my allergies are going to get bad the last couple of days here in New York with the weather constantly changing. Next, so I'm going to start talking about the ports of call. We went to Amber Cove, Dominican Republic. We spent the day there at the pool until it started downpouring. So then we ran back onto the ship. But it was only one of those 15, 20-minute rain rainfalls, but by the time I got back, everything was soaked. All the chairs were soaked. The pool water was cold from the rain, so we decided to go back on the ship. We went to Serenity. We had some lunch. We hung out in the hot tub. It was a nice overall day. This is one few times in Emerald Cove. We decided not to do an excursion because we've been there so many times. So we decided just to hang out at the pool, relax a little bit, and have a good time, which we did. Next, the next port day, we were in San Juan. Now, um, it was very beautiful. We walked around, we went to the forts, we took some pictures. We tried to wanted to go into the fort because that's what we like to do. We haven't been to one of the forts in a few years, but the line to get in was so long. It was like the line to get in was about half an hour long, and for my friend and I, who we've both done this fort a couple times before, say it's not worth a half an hour to stand in line just to do the same fort we've done before. I mean, so we just decided to do a little bit more walking around Old San Juan. We found the old umbrella street. Unfortunately, they did take all the umbrellas down, so that is pretty much gone. All the umbrellas, they still have the street. You can still see the hangers on the street, but the umbrellas, unfortunately, are gone. Um, One thing about San Juan is the Senior Frogs in Old San Juan across the street from the cruise port has closed, but off on one of the side streets, replacing it is a brand new Fat Tuesdays. So we spent the afternoon Fat Tuesdays. We got a couple of drinks. Actually, one of the bartenders there told us she was working at Senior Frogs until it closed, and then she took the job at Fat Tuesdays. She just said Senior Frogs just did not renew the franchise in San Juan. I don't understand why, because every time I was in there, it was full, and it was literally across the street from Cruise Port, but they decided not to renew the franchise, so that closed. But the Fat Tuesdays on one of the side streets, one of the main side streets, though you'll have no trouble finding it open in its place. It's a bit smaller, but it's a good experience. It's more modern, and it was a lot of fun. I got a yard. It was a mixture of strawberry daiquiri and an electric lemonade, so it was very good and potent. Okay, so the next day we were in St. Martin, and my friend and I we decided to go to Mayhold Beach. We took a taxi there. It was about $18 round trip per person, which isn't bad. Actually, that's pretty good. The one thing is we got there early, which we're glad because as more as the day went on later and later, we still only stayed for like 2 hours because it was a narrow strip of sand. The beach was so crowded you could barely move. So we waited for a few planes to land, and then we waited for the first jet departure, which I believe was a JetBlue departure, and then we left because the it was just so crowded and we thought about going into town, but then we was like, we don't have that much time, so we just went back on the ship. That's one of the days I told you about when I would go into the pool at Daft Pool because there was room to get in at the Tides Pool because we were in port and most people were still in port for the day. So we went to pool. I was able to enjoy a little bit. The Daft Pool once it started getting a bit crowded, we went back up to Serenity, but that was an overall nice day. We did a little bit of duty free shopping in the port, but we didn't get a chance to walk around Phillipsburg this time because we just didn't have enough time because of when we arrived. Okay, our last port day was in St. Thomas. Now, we had a good 2 hours before our excursion to Magens Bay beach. So what we did was we got off the ship, we walked around a little bit, we did some shopping, we did our traditional pictures around the promenade area. We walked all the way to the end. As we walked our way back towards the cruise port, we did some duty free shopping, especially in the port area. I was able to get a couple of T-shirts and a couple of gifts for people back home. And then we did the excursion to Magens Bay Beach, which was very beautiful. It's better than my second time at Magens Bay. I tell everyone if you've been to St. Thomas before, do the excursion to Magens Bay. It's beautiful. You won't regret it. They didn't have any drinks or food included in the excursion, but they did have a beach bar and a bit of a restaurant right there at Magens Bay. So my friend and I each got a drink. The crib beer. It was a bit expensive, but like I said, it's a beach bar in a tourist location, so they're gonna get you with the prices for that. Okay, so we went after Magens Bay. We went back to the ship. We relaxed a little bit, and then the next 2 days were the last 2 sea days on our way back to Port Canaveral. On board the ship, the 80s party was awesome. It was a lot of fun happening. The mega deck party, to be honest, this second or third night of the cruise, I don't remember which one it was. It was okay, but the kids kind of took over that party, so it wasn't as much fun as the mega deck party normally is. I got there a bit late because I was in the piano bar. I went to the mega deck party, and then I'm like, wasn't really feeling it, so I left the mega deck party a bit earlier than I normally did. Went back to the piano bar, enjoyed myself. The second night cruise, I believe it was second night or third night, I did indeed max out the cheers package. I think everyone should do it at least once, even though they don't put the number of drinks on your folio anymore. So that people too many we got the answer that too many people were actually posting it and tried to think of it as a challenge. So that if you've been on a carnival ship recently, you notice that they don't put the number of drinks once you hit 10 anymore on there. That's the reason, because too many people were trying made it into a challenge and posting it, and the cruise line just didn't want people drinking too much, going overboard. So that's part of the reason. So when you max it out now, you kind of don't have an idea unless you ask the bartender how many you have left. So you don't hit that number randomly or accidentally, should I say. So the last thing I want to talk about is the staff on board. Our wait staff was very good. I can't remember the names. We spent 8 nights, 8 days at the main dining room because one night we had a specialty restaurant, and the other night we just looked in the menu and we're like, we're not feeling the menu. So I went to Zai one night for ramen and for dinner, and my friend went to the buffet. Just we looked at the menu and we weren't feeling it. So normally we go all 7 or 8 nights. This time we just went six, but it was one of those things. Our room steward was he was wonderful. He was back and forth. Usually we go to breakfast and the room would be ready by sometimes by the time we came back, and if not, by the time we got back on the ship, the room was all ready. He was quick, he was great. We always had extra towels if we need them. I can't say enough about our room steward. He did a wonderful job. So, in closing, this was a very good cruise. As I said, I could have done with all without the 900 kids on board. It was basically all families, kids, teenagers, families, maybe some people our age. Like there were very few people our age. We didn't meet a single other person by ourselves who was single like I am or by themselves. It was either families and some couples. That was it, and there weren't too many couples who were just there by themselves without their families. So while we did have a really good time, it was a good cruise. It was just a much different vibe than we're used to. So in conclusion, this I'm gonna give this cruise 8 out of 10. Not because of anything, because of the staff or anything that happened on. Actually, there is one thing that did happen on board. We were in guest services one day, and this guy just needed to cut in front of us because there was an incident with his daughter on board. He said, reporting that his daughter got touched by another cruiser, and then the last night of the cruise, there was a fight on Lido deck. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I didn't see it personally, but I heard about that. Two guys got in a fight because one guy was accusing another guy's son of sexually assaulting his daughter, or of that ilk, and security got involved. He got tackled. He was belligerent, and there were a few incidents on board. So that's why I would argue that this cruise was an 8 out of 10 because it didn't involve me directly, but between so many kids on board and then there being a few incidents on board that really didn't involve me, but no fault to the cruise line itself or the cruise staff itself, I'm going to give this cruise an 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I will be back as soon as possible with another video. And remember, be a cruiser. My next cruise will be June 15th on a Norwegian Escape. Thank you and have a good night.